2,000 years after his assassination, Julius Caesar is still revered as one of the greatest rulers in history. His story resonates as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power. His military genius and political acumen propelled him to the position of dictator for life, but his reign ended abruptly and violently on the Ides of March. Let's delve into the life of Julius Caesar. Gaius Julius Caesar was born on either July 12th or 13th in 100 BCE. He hailed from a patrician family that historically held political influence, but was not particularly powerful at the time of his birth. His father, also named Gaius, served as a praetor, an elected magistrate, and was the governor of the province of Asia. His mother, Aurelia, came from a family of some prominence. Caesar's aunt, Julia, was married to Gaius Marius, a leader of the popular faction in Roman politics. Little is known about Caesar's childhood, but his education included studying Greek and reading the works of Greek historians. In his early teens, he attended lectures on philosophy and rhetoric, showing a keen interest in honing his skills as a public speaker. Don't forget to like and subscribe, as this is a small channel, and your engagement helps us to create more content for you. This was a prized ability in Rome, where the Roman Forum served as the hub of intellectual discussion and debate during Caesar's youth. It was in the Forum that political ideas were argued, questions were debated, and elections were held. Any ambitious man needed to master the skill of captivating an audience, and young Julius Caesar was proving to be quite ambitious. Tragedy struck the Caesar household in 85 BCE, when Gaius Caesar Sr. died suddenly. At just 16 years old, Julius became the head of his family, inheriting this responsibility as civil war erupted between the popular faction, led by his uncle Gaius Marius, and his political rival Lucius Cornelius Sulla. After a bitter and bloody struggle, Sulla emerged victorious, leading to Gaius Marius's exile to Africa, where he died shortly thereafter. With Sulla in power, those with ties to Gaius Marius faced persecution. Having married Cornelia, the daughter of a prominent member of the popular faction, the teenage Caesar became a target when Sulla ordered him to annul his marriage and distance himself from Gaius Marius. Caesar refused and was proscribed by Sulla, marking him for execution. At 18, Caesar was forced into hiding. The influence of his mother's family eventually led Sulla to lift the death sentence, but Caesar remained cautious. To ensure his safety, he decided it was best to leave Rome while Sulla was in power. Caesar then set his sights on a military career. He initially served under Marcus Minucius Thermus, proving to be a natural soldier with distinguished service in the provinces of Asia and Cilicia. In 79 BCE, he was awarded the oak leaves of the civic crown for saving the life of a fellow citizen in battle. Caesar's rising military stature led to his selection as an emissary to King Nicomedes IV of Bithynia, tasked with securing a fleet of ships. He successfully completed the mission, although rumours spread that he had managed to persuade the king through inappropriate means. In 78 BCE, Sulla died, allowing Caesar to return to Rome. Having left the army, he began a career as a legal advocate. With his inheritance confiscated during Sulla's reign, he and his wife lived modestly in the lower-class neighbourhoods of Subura. Through his legal representations, Caesar developed a reputation as a powerful and passionate public speaker. In 75 BCE, while travelling to advance his studies in Greece, Caesar was kidnapped by Sicilian pirates and held for ransom. When the pirates told him they had demanded 20 talents for his release, he was insulted and insisted they increase it to 50 talents. Treated well by the pirates, he had a relatively relaxed time with them. However, before the ransom was paid and he was released, he vowed to hunt them down and have them crucified. True to his word, Caesar raised a group of volunteers and overpowered his former captors. Prior to their execution, he had the pirates' throats cut as a show of leniency for their having treated him well. Shortly after his pirate escapades, Caesar was recalled to military service. He was sent to the province of Asia, tasked with raising a volunteer force to quell a rebellion. After successfully completing this mission, he returned to Rome and was appointed as a military tribune, marking the beginning of his political career. Caesar openly supported the popular faction that Sulla had suppressed years earlier. He took on the prominent case of prosecuting Dolabella, the governor of Macedonia, who had been closely associated with Sulla. When the trial commenced, Caesar appeared in the forum with forceful and vigorous arguments, winning great public support. By opposing Dolabella, Caesar positioned himself as the people's champion, increasingly seen as the natural inheritor of Marius and a leader of the popular faction, despite Sulla's supporters still being in the ascendancy. However, Dolabella was acquitted, but the case made Julius Caesar one of the most conspicuous men in Rome. Caesar relished the prominence he was receiving and began to assume the role of the leader of the popular party. He spoke fluently in the forum, addressing both popular assemblies and courts of justice. In his legal role, he specialized in defending those accused of political crimes. Through his energy, boldness, and strength of logic and reasoning, he became the rising champion of the people. When Caesar's aunt Julia, the wife of Marius, died, he arranged a prominent funeral for her. Since the suppression of her husband's faction, Julia had lived in obscurity, and associating with her was dangerous. Yet, the fearless Caesar delivered a flattering funeral oration from the rostrum of the forum, condemning the ouster of his uncle. Caesar even produced images of Marius for the crowd to see during the funeral. Some patrician partisans in the audience objected, but they were quickly shouted down by the crowd. Soon after, Caesar delivered another funeral oration, this time for his own wife, Cornelia, who had died. In his speech, he praised her family, prominent members of the popular faction. In both orations, he emphasized the ancient nobility of his family, claiming descent from the first king on his mother's side and from the gods on his father's side. Following Cornelia's funeral, Caesar was appointed as a quaestor, a position involving financial auditing duties. He traveled to Spain, where he served in this role in 69 BCE. It is said that while in Spain, he came across a statue of Alexander the Great, which caused him to reflect on his own life's accomplishments. At 32, the same age at which Alexander had achieved world dominance, Caesar felt he had achieved nothing of significance. He resolved to change that situation. Upon returning to Rome, Caesar's prominence and popularity led to his election to a succession of public offices. In 67 BCE, he was appointed to the Senate and married Pompeia, the granddaughter of Sulla. However, their marriage lasted only 6 years, ending when Pompeia became entangled in a damaging political scandal. In 65 BCE, Caesar was appointed as a formal magistrate. During this time, he engaged in the popular custom of cementing public favour by staging lavish entertainment spectacles, including games with wild beasts and gladiators from all over the realm. These extravagant displays made Caesar extremely popular with the masses, but also put a huge strain on his finances, plunging him into debt. The only way he could possibly extricate himself from his financial woes was by rising to a position of ultimate power. In 63 BCE, Caesar set his sights on the position of Pontifex Maximus, or chief priest. He spent even more borrowed money to gain popular support, and despite being opposed by 2 powerful senators, he won the position. The following year, Caesar was appointed as propraetor, or magistrate, in an area of southern Spain. Before he could assume the position, he needed to settle his outstanding debts. He turned to one of the city's richest men, Marcus Licinius Crassus. Crassus agreed to help Caesar financially in exchange for political influence in his favour. Caesar then travelled to Spain, where he proved to be a successful administrator, achieving both military and financial success. He returned to Rome with enough money to pay off all his debts. Caesar was now in a position to aim for the highest political office in Rome, the office of consul. After the Romans had ousted their kings, they vested supreme magistracy in the hands of 2 consuls, elected each year in a general election. If left to the people, Caesar would have had no problem gaining the needed votes, given his immense popularity. However, he faced opposition from several influential political rivals. At the time, a bitter rivalry was unfolding between 2 men of great influence, Pompey and Crassus. Pompey was a great military leader, while Crassus wielded influence due to his immense wealth. Caesar conceived a plan to unite them, securing the backing of both for his consulship. He succeeded brilliantly, creating a triumvirate of the 3 most influential politicians in Rome, each committed to advancing the political careers of the others. To cement his alliance with Pompey, Caesar arranged for his only daughter Julia to marry Pompey. With the support of Crassus and Pompey, Caesar set about securing his appointment as consul. His political opponents, recognizing that they could not prevent Caesar's public support from securing the consulship, focused on blocking Caesar's preferred co-consul, Lucius. They put forward Bibulus, a political opponent of Caesar, for the position. Caesar and Bibulus were elected co-consuls for the year 59 BCE. However, Caesar quickly sidelined his colleague, assuming full power and implementing measures unilaterally to ingratiate himself with the people. Caesar faced opposition from leading members of the Senate, with one of his staunchest opponents being Cato, a fervent patriot incensed by Caesar's unilateral decision-making. At one point, Caesar ordered Cato to be taken into custody and imprisoned. As Cato was being escorted out by guards, another influential senator rose to accompany him. When Caesar asked where he was going, the senator replied that he would rather be in prison with Cato than in the Senate with Caesar. Caesar's control of the consulship was so complete that his co-consul Bibulus gave up entirely, retiring to his house and leaving Caesar free rein. After his consulship, Caesar embarked on a military career, aiming to achieve great military conquests and elevate his stature further. His powerful political allies helped him secure the proconsulship over 3 provinces for an unprecedented 5-year governorship. He became governor of Illyricum in the Balkans, Cisalpine Gaul in northern Italy, and Transalpine Gaul in southern France. Caesar's first opportunity for conquest came when southeastern Gaul was invaded by a tribe known as the Helvetii. Caesar moved against them with 6 legions and crushed them in a fierce 5-hour battle. He then turned his attention to the Germanic tribes. Despite the formidable reputation of these warriors, the Roman legions managed to defeat them at the Battle of Vosges. By 57 BCE, Caesar had expanded his army to 8 legions, numbering around 40,000 men. He set out to subjugate the Belgae tribes, decimating each one individually before they could unite against him. The final victory came at the Battle of Sabes, by which time Caesar had completely conquered the Gauls. With his power now unquestioned within his territory, Caesar began looking beyond known borders, setting his sights on Germania and Britannia. In 55 BCE, he built a bridge across the Rhine in a record 10 days, dismantling it after spending 18 days probing the countryside. A similar scouting mission was made into Britannia later that same year. In 54 BCE, Caesar returned to Britannia with 5 legions, aiming to establish a permanent Roman base. However, the Britons had other plans and continually harassed the Romans with hit-and-run attacks. Despite this, the determination of their leader and the discipline of their ranks enabled the Romans to systematically hunt down the local resistance. Eventually, the Britons sued for peace. Caesar negotiated an annual tribute, took a swath of hostages, and then left, never to set foot on British soil again. In 53 BCE, a Gaulish revolt was quickly suppressed, but a year later, a more determined and better organised revolt occurred under the leadership of Vercingetorix, a powerful warrior intent on expelling the Romans from Gaul. Caesar set out to crush the revolt with a full complement of 10 legions. After suffering several losses, Vercingetorix adopted a scorched earth policy. At Gergovia, the Romans suffered their first defeat. However, revenge came swiftly at the Battle of Alesia, where the revolt was crushed, and Vercingetorix was captured and transported to Rome, paraded in a cage like a wild animal. In 47 BCE, Caesar embarked on a voyage to Turkey to deal with Pharnaces II, who had been extending his power by overpowering several neighbouring Roman states. With just 3 legions, Caesar went directly to the town of Zela to face Pharnaces. The Romans took up a strong position on a hilltop, and the Turkish revolt was quickly put down, giving rise to Caesar's famous quote, "Veni, vidi, vici." I came, I saw, I conquered. Over the next 2 years, Caesar quelled rebellions in North Africa and Hispania. During his years in military campaigns, Caesar sought to continue influencing Roman politics through his supporters. In 56 BCE, he met with his old allies Crassus and Pompey to renew their triumvirate alliance. However, over the next few years, the alliance began to break down. In 53 BCE, Crassus was killed in battle. Meanwhile, Pompey started distancing himself from Caesar, and the relationship further deteriorated when Julia, Caesar's daughter and Pompey's wife, died during childbirth. In 52 BCE, rioting erupted in Rome, leading to Pompey being appointed consul without a colleague. He quickly aligned himself with the Optimates, a faction of aristocrats opposed to Caesar. The following year, with Caesar's military conquests completed, the Optimates warned him that if he returned to Rome, he would be immediately arrested for his actions during his consulship. Within the city, popular factions developed in support of both Pompey and Caesar. Caesar's followers attempted to have him elected consul in absentia, but the opposition demanded that he first return to Rome to face the charges and give up command of his army. Caesar balked at these demands, knowing there was only one recourse. He had to march on Rome and claim what he rightfully saw as his. On January 10, 49 BCE, he marshalled a single legion across the Rubicon River, marking the border of his province. This act was an immediate declaration of civil war, yet there was no battle. Pompey, with most of his forces deployed in Spain, fled to the south, enabling Caesar to march on Rome unhindered. There, he declared himself dictator, with his top general, Mark Antony, as his second-in-command. Shortly after, Caesar was elected to the consulship, at which point he resigned his dictatorship. Caesar then set out in pursuit of Pompey, leaving Mark Antony in control of Rome. By this time, Pompey had established himself in Greece and was building a force to challenge Caesar. In 48 BCE, the two armies met on the plains of Pharsalus, with Pompey's forces outnumbering Caesar's 2-1. However, Caesar won by employing superior tactics. Pompey managed to escape to Egypt, where he sought refuge. Caesar pursued Pompey to Alexandria, where he was handed the head of his adversary, who had been betrayed by the Egyptians and paid the ultimate price. Just before Caesar's arrival in Alexandria, Cleopatra, the 21-year-old joint ruler, had been driven from the city. She had herself smuggled into Caesar's presence inside a rolled-up rug, beseeching him for assistance in regaining the throne. Seeing Cleopatra as a valuable future ally, Caesar agreed to support her. A prolonged Egyptian siege of Alexandria followed. Caesar ordered the Egyptian fleet to be burned and managed to hold off a force of around 20,000 for several months. He sent to Rome for reinforcements, and when they arrived, he marched out to join them. In the ensuing battle, the Egyptians were defeated, and Cleopatra was installed as pharaoh. After spending an additional 2 months enjoying her company, Caesar began his return journey to Rome. On his way back, he put down a rebellion in Asia Minor. During his absence, things had not gone well in Rome, largely due to Mark Antony's mismanagement. Employing great diplomatic skills, Caesar overcame a potential navy mutiny and quelled a rebellion by the Optimates. Caesar was now appointed dictator for 10 years. At the height of his powers and enjoying unprecedented public support, he ruled autocratically. This caused great bitterness among the senators, with significant dissent from Pompey's sons, Sextus and Gnaeus. These two fled to Spain and fomented a revolt, forcing Caesar to personally travel there to put it down. In February 44 BCE, Caesar was appointed Dictator Perpetuo. During the ceremony, he refused to wear the diadem that Mark Antony handed to him, stating that Jupiter was the only rightful king of the Romans. He then prepared to lead a military campaign against the Parthians. However, before his planned departure from Rome, Caesar attended a final meeting of the Senate. On the 15th of March, 44 BCE, unbeknownst to Caesar, 60 of his most bitter rivals in the Senate came to the meeting with daggers concealed under their togas. Caesar entered the chamber and made his way to his golden chair. At the designated signal, senators from all directions leapt upon him. As the first dagger blow struck, Caesar was heard to cry out, "Why this violence?" 2 of his supporters tried to come to his aid, but they were blocked by the conspirators. Within minutes, he had been stabbed 23 times. His final act was to cover his face with his toga so that none would see his death expression. Caesar died at the feet of a statue of Pompey. The conspirators wanted to throw his body into the Tiber River, but they were stopped by Mark Antony. The announcement of Caesar's death was met with rioting by the people, and the conspirators were forced to flee the city. Caesar's body was cremated, and the Temple of Caesar was built on the cremation site. From that point on, the legend of the martyred Caesar was passed down through the centuries. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for brand new videos.